I'm going to turn it over to you and let you give everybody a lovely introduction of yourself. But Shanna and I have been working together for quite a while now, and I'm super excited to get into this. Take it away,
Yes.
Shanna.
Yes, so I am Shanna Windle of Shine with Shanna. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and a transformational coach, and I'm here to speak today on whatever it is that Erik wants to address. So sounds like maybe burnout, maybe subconscious type.
Yeah. So, so we just a little backstory. Shannon and I work together on her brand. We've gone through 2 iterations of it now, but there's a very interesting story as to where kind of Shanna's background is, which I want you to share with everybody because it's the transition of what you were doing to what you're doing now, I think is super important. So if you want to just give me where you're at in your career now, what you're doing and how you got there.
Right. So now I work with a lot of what I like to refer to as corporate rock star type A type personalities, and basically helping them move through blocks, subconscious blocks, things that are stumbling blocks for them throughout life, whether that's health or relationships, things that are going on professionally. I tend to work with them in a coaching capacity as well as in a hypnotherapy capacity. I have blended those 2 together, and that's how I work with my clients now. And I believe the reason that tends to be my client, my avatar, if you will, is because I come from a background in law. I was an attorney for 10 years before I stepped out of that world and into really holistic wellness was my entry point for all of this work. Doing integrative nutrition, health coaching, was trained by the school that I think all the holistic coaches, wellness wise, are trained by now, IN out of New York. And over time, I was working with clients, working with them on their health journeys, whether that be nutritional lifestyle or exercise regimes, supplements, things like that. I was noticing that I would work with people for 6 months to a year. There would be changes for sure. The 18-month, 2-year mark, I would hear back again from people where they had regressed to some extent. And this was happening over and over again, which made me first question how effective I was as a coach, because of course that's the first place I go in
Sure.
self-judgment.
Yeah.
Upon further reflection and research, and just what I like to call the universe pinging me, is this whole layer of the subconscious mind, and how when we make adjustments to our habits, our lifestyles, our patterns, we certainly can make adjustments to those things. Diet, let's say we go on the keto diet or the paleo diet or what have you. We'll lose the weight, most likely. We'll probably introduce some healthier ways of being into our life, but we always have a background story that's running that has most likely come from a very early period of time in our life. And
Yes.
we're not generally aware of that background story until we really start to work with the subconscious mind. And for those that have delved into this area or know things like meditation or
Mm-hmm.
affirmations, that type of work, they're probably familiar with the fact that once that the conscious mind really is only 5% in charge of
Yeah.
our daily life. And
Mm-hmm.
we actually think that it's in charge of so much more. But the true powerhouse is the subconscious. It dictates 95% of our behaviors and really who we are.
Yeah.
So once we get in and start rewiring those stories, that's where the secret sauce to sustainability is.
I love that. Let's backtrack a minute and then I want to come back to this. What was your reason for shifting from being an attorney or lawyer, whichever, those are like interchangeable terms, I guess, but why did you transition from that into what you're doing now, or even into the nutrition side of things?
Sure. So right around the time that I decided, there was a lot that happened in about a year's time frame for me.
Sure.
So I lost my mom, who was 57 years old, to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which was supposed to be very treatable, it's an aggressive form of cancer, but a very treatable form of cancer.
Sure.
She was in remission, and 3 months later, she passed away.
Oh my.
And I thought to myself, this is strange. The PET scan had showed that she was fine. She was in remission. That happened. I went through a divorce at the same time. I had been married for 10 years, had 2 children with my ex-husband. That was within that same year. And I had pretty much decided on my own at that point that law itself, or the practice of law, just felt just misaligned at that point in my life. I'm a very conflict adverse personality, and that is not the legal field.
Sure, yeah.
Loved law school, but the actual practice of law is much different. I entered law knowing that I wanted to help people. That was the driving force behind law for me. But I knew at that point in time that my health was suffering so much just from the emotional toll that my life circumstances had taken at that time, that I knew deep down there had to be a better answer than what Western medicine was giving as far as my mom's condition was concerned. And I knew that I wanted to step out of the practice of law at that point too, because it was just adding to my emotional and physical stress at that time. So that was kind of my launching off point into holistic wellness, was like, okay, I've been told so many things throughout my life, and don't get me wrong, Western medicine certainly has its place, but there was this whole other area of life, I felt like, or cause and effect, that wasn't being discussed or even addressed. So that was when I left law itself, and I just decided to go down this holistic wellness path, and here I am today.
Well, I think that kind of speaks to almost what we want to touch on here. I think there's obviously a very clear difference between that corporate expectation and lifestyle and on what you're doing now, which is obviously much more calm, centered, introspective, all of these things. So with respect to burnout, with respect to adrenal fatigue and all of these things, you have two sides of the same coin now. And I know as a creative, as somebody that's running my own business, and I'm sure maybe you experience the same types of things, we're constantly juggling all of the things. You don't get to just go in and show up for your job. You have to pay. You have to wear like 10 hats, literally. Yeah. So by comparison, well, first of all, actually, knowing what you know now, right? Do you think you could ever go back into law? Having taken the time to be able to do that, and obviously other life circumstances removed, but do you think you could go back into that having the tools you have now?
I've considered this question over the last few years myself too. And I'm a much different person now in my own spiritual evolution than I was a decade ago when I stepped out. Is it something I would prefer to do? No, not really. If it became a necessity at some point in life, yes. I'm trained in that field. I've kept my law license active, but I would approach it in a much different way. I would do a different area, but no, it's certainly not my preference at this point. Just knowing me, knowing my personality.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think once you hit probably that understanding of how things can be different and how you can handle yourself differently, it probably puts you in a position where you're like, okay, I can't add that back in. And I think, unfortunately, for some of us, I'm very much if you don't know me at all by now, I'm very much a yes person. I'm very much I want to help people. I'm very type A. I'm very all these things. And I struggle with burnout. I struggle with not wanting to just throw in the towel and go, okay, I just need somebody else to do all of this because it's even too much for me, even though I say I love it. And with me, I hit the point of burnout that I don't realize that I've burned out. I don't realize that I'm done until I hate every aspect of the rest of my life. And then I keep being fed, right? Like I keep feeding the beast that is the profession. but I'm negating everything else and like blaming it on everything else. So maybe this is even a little more for me than everybody else. But what do you do when you're, say you wanted to stay continuing in law, right? Like how do you realize that's something that's either controlling your life or eating up certain pieces of what you're doing, and you love hate it. You've got that kind of thing going on. I'm interested in how do I continue to do what I love without hating what I love?
Yeah.
Through that. How do I even know it's happening?
Yeah. Well, it sounds, obviously every person's different, but it sounds like you know your indicators now. You start, if it's hating everything else in life besides whatever. So for each of us, for some of the clients I've worked with over the years, a lot of it's been health related, physical health related. Okay. There's been, whether it's depression and anxiety to just fatigue and lethargy, to total disinterest in things that used to inspire them or things that used to bring joy to their lives. And I think your question's interesting because it's, what are the indicators of this? And how do I, not only that, but is this the root cause of all of it? Or is this, so I need to get away from it like I did from law as a part of all of my journey? Yeah. Or just how do I learn to balance within something that I know that I enjoy doing? Yeah. Physical, what I see usually as physical indicators are like issues with blood pressure, issues with energy, both sides, either ones that are totally wired or ones that are crashing all the time. Oh. Whether you're having food cravings that aren't normal for you, super salty, super sugary, can't get that under control. Oh. Your emotions, like you were saying earlier, your emotions are all over the place at times where you just can't, you almost feel manic depressive at times. You're totally wired emotionally, or you're just totally sad, crying. And it can be within a 12-hour period that you're one or the other. For me personally, my immune system took a huge hit. So I was getting sick all the time. If you're finding that you're getting sick with infections or what have you, you just can't recover from a cold that seems to be lingering forever, or sleep too, either insomnia or just so overtired throughout your day. Those are a lot of the physical symptoms that I see presenting when somebody's experiencing burnout. Yeah. So
I'm like checking my list off over here. I'm like, what is happening? Thanks for all of these. I'm going to go hide in a hole now.
Oh, Erik.
Oh, it's
come
okay.
In for a session.
It's all right. I know. I need to come in for a session. That's crazy. Okay, so physical is huge. Yes. Anything else as far as, I know I always feel like emotionally, sometimes I get really I almost feel like a little baby on the inside. I'm always just, it's this push and pull, this like tug of like, I have to do it, but I don't really want to. I become like a 6-year-old that's just like struggling through the whole thing. Yeah. So I don't know if
your little inner teenager that's rebelling at that moment.
It is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're the adult on the outside is going, no, but you have to do this because you have to. You said you were going to. So here we go. Yeah.
Well, and it's always important. Like our inner teenager has a time and a place. And generally that part of us comes out when somebody's crossed a boundary, or we've crossed our own boundary, our internal boundary in some way, where it's like, hey, listen to what I'm telling you right now. Wow. And instead it comes out in this kind of rebellious, type format, but it's something to listen to. Absolutely. That it's trying to indicate something to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a topic that I continue to talk to, not so much with business owners, but I do think that is a big thing with small business owners, but specifically with other creatives, because I think that we have a strong attachment to our work because it's so much like an inherent part of who we are, right? And we have a really hard time saying no. We have a hard time doing all of these things. So when you're so attached, how do you, I guess I'm looking for ways to be able to say, either effectively say no, effectively hold on to like pieces of yourself, effectively combat the burnout, and just be comfortable in that. I just think that's a huge story. And I think even for business owners in general, maybe it's just a type A thing too. But how do we even learn to combat that sort of thing? Like the recognition is one thing. Another is to continue through without just dropping it all. Because I think that's the number one thing. That's like the first thing you want to do, right? Get away from it.
Yeah. And I think those that kind of goes back to that inner teenager too, that those boundaries that you've established for yourself, which are good to do in a period of time within your work that feels good. Work on where you know that your limits are or where your limits will be, and stick to those as you move forward in your work. So whether that's, okay, generally for a creative project of, I don't know, let's say website development for this particular brand, I know will generally take me a month long. You got a client that comes in that asks you to do it for a week and a half, in a week and a half time frame, you know that's just not going to be probably a reasonable ask of you. So instead of saying, okay, let me move 5 million things around to try and accomplish this, unless that person maybe is paying you for that time period. It's really learning, knowing yourself and knowing what boundaries you need to stick to within yourself. And the people pleasing aspect of it all, I can totally sympathize with. And that was a large part of my journey with law. And if you know that you are somebody that has a hard time saying no, this type of burnout, adrenal fatigue, or just regular psychological burnout, you will end up there. Without learning how to say no, you will end up, it's just a recipe for disaster. So start now. If you know that about your personality, if you know that's how you work, I always tell people it's the baby steps. It's not like you got to do a complete 180 right now and totally drive hard lines and rigid lines with everybody, with clients, with whomever. It's, okay, today I'm going to say no to this, or tomorrow I'm going to put this boundary in place. And you're basically getting your nervous system accustomed to putting in place boundaries, because if you're a people pleaser, your nervous system's going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. This person's not going to like me. I'm going to lose this person as a client. And there's that anxiety that starts, and then all the stories from the background, from your subconscious of you're not good enough and blah, blah, blah. You're never going to be able to make this all work. All starts coming forward, and it all starts from that nervous system going, I don't feel safe in being able to do this. So by taking those little micro actions, those baby steps, and starting to do little things along the way, you're basically training your nervous system that, okay, like, this is safe in this moment. This is safe in this moment. And then over time, that all builds up, and then the boundaries are in place. And we never want boundaries to be too rigid or too permeable. You want to be in the middle with it all. Those just start to feel easier and easier to put into place over time and to hold. It's one thing to put a boundary into place. It's another thing to hold to it over time as well. So over time, that just becomes more and more comfortable for you.
Yeah, because I do think that a lot of people, it's always, for myself especially too, it's like one end or the other. It's if I'm going to say no, like I have to be so like in the conviction of saying no, right? No, absolutely not. And no to everything, right? And it's hard to find that kind of happy medium where you feel comfortable and you don't feel like you're being mean, right? I think a lot of us feel like saying no is being mean, but at the same time, like, it's your energy, it's your time, it's your life, just like it's their time, energy, and their life. And how do you, this people pleaser thing, I think a lot of business owners are that way too. I think if we're out there trying to help people, or if we're trying to promote a product or a service or whatever, I think the general thing always comes, unless you're just trying to make money, but it always comes back to trying to help people, right? Which I think is some indicator of trying to people please. So how do you even get around beyond those boundaries? I'm interested to know how tell people to help people set boundaries, find the boundaries that are right for them. Oh, is there anything you can speak to regarding that? Because no is one thing, but I think there's a lot of other boundaries that are involved too, even for yourself.
Sure. So I think when I try and help clients navigate this whole issue, it's generally because I work also on a somatic level too, which is why the nervous system is so important to work with when it comes to boundaries and enforcing boundaries. But when you're feeling that, again, I'll refer to it as that inner teenager, like that rebellious
like angst.
Angst or anger. When you're feeling anger, there's just something that happens, I think, emotionally, internally, when a boundary has been overstepped. And it's going to be different for everybody. So
Sure.
you tune into you. I'm not somebody that, I don't get angry a lot of the time. I go to grief for like sadness or so. In my body, how it feels is there's like a gut reaction, and then there's a sadness for me. For others, it's that gut reaction, and then there's the anger, or there's just an off type feeling within your body. And that's where we start to identify, okay, whatever is causing that, whatever the root cause of that is, we need to reverse engineer it and then put the boundary in place there. So I don't know if that's answering
Yeah,
your question.
absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's a big part of this, from what I'm hearing so far, is that we just have a hard time paying attention to ourselves.
Yeah, we're very disconnected from our bodies.
We are. I mean, that's definitely something. This is a recurring theme for me. I continue to ignore it, but it's a recurring theme. And I think do you have clients generally like journal? How do you get that out because we're so usually in the now of other things, right? We're always like, not even in the now. We're always thinking about the future or the past or whatever it is. We have a hard time living in the present anyways. But how do you continue to, I always call it policing things, but like, how do you continue to pay attention to that, to figure out what even is the indicator?
Yeah, and you're so right. We, particularly in a professional setting and in our culture, it is very goal driven, achievement oriented. What's the next mark I can hit? What's the next client I can get? What's the next achievement we are very much that way here in the United States in particular. So it seems simple, what I'm about to say, but it's transformational if you do it on the reg, which is what I call just one heart-centered breath. So in a moment of complete overwhelm, let's say, just placing your hand on your chest and taking a deep breath in and out just calms everything down in that moment for you to actually be able to tune in to yourself and to feel what it is. I have clients set timers on their phones sometimes, multiple times throughout a day, to ask themselves, what am I feeling in this moment? Because we are
Wow.
so disconnected from ourselves. I've got chiropractors and people in the medical field that have come to me and said, I don't even know what I feel most of the time.
Yeah.
I'm not even connected. And so really doing that heart-centered breath and asking yourself in that moment, what is it I'm feeling right now? What am I experiencing right now? Because we are so much up in our head and we are on that hamster wheel of production, and creatives have to meet deadline. We have to please clients. All of those things are important to our business, to our profession. However, when it comes to us and keeping the ship afloat before it all sinks, it's so important to learn to really tune in and to ask yourself in any given moment during the day, what am I feeling right now? And it could be something that is grief or sadness that hasn't been recognized until you take that breath and you realize that's what is really deep down inside in this moment. And then you can evaluate whether that's a time that you can actually process through that emotion, or if that emotion needs to wait to be processed later. But truly tuning into yourself, figuring that out, and if the time isn't right, acknowledging it and telling yourself, we're tabling this for now, for tonight when we're at home.
Yeah.
Again, that goes back to building the trust with ourselves and connecting back into our bodies so that we don't end up in burnout, because we'll have the indicators along the way that we're paying attention to, that we can address the things along the way that we need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because a lot of times it does get. Thank you for that, by the way, because I'm sitting here like getting chills going, why is this so simple? Why am I can just see myself the next time we do you'll have me in tears like I'm in the middle of a project, like holding onto my heart over here. But we don't see it until it's done, until it's there. Yeah. And I've heard also, there's a bunch of stuff that floats around the internet. When you hit burnout, what really is like a recovery period on it? Like what's true burnout look like at the end of the day? You know what I mean? Because I don't think we ever get over over burnout or adrenal fatigue or whatever. We like take a brief pause for a day or 2 days, and then we're back in it. So what's the shelf life on burnout?
Unfortunately, it takes time to recover. And for our fast-paced life and environment, I know that's hard to hear, but recovering from something like that takes some time. It depends on how long you've been in it and been trying
Sure.
to function in it. If you catch it early on, your recovery period's going to be less. But
Sure.
there's the psychological level of everything, finding interest again in things that you used to enjoy doing, finding interest in your work again, if it's something work related. Those can be things that are, I think, addressed a little more quickly, but the actual physical toll that it's taken on your endocrine system. So yes, your adrenals, which are the endocrine organs that sit on top of our kidneys, they're the things that produce hormones that help us in stressful situations. They regulate things like cortisol and adrenaline. And I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
However, these are the things that end up getting affected, which, if you think about it, I had a holistic doctor explain it to me once. It's like our endocrine system and our adrenal glands are made to basically regulate things like cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Back in the caveman days, we saw a bear, whatever, our cortisol jumped up, our stress hormone jumped up, our adrenaline jumped up to be able to respond to that situation quickly and effectively. And then we would reach homeostasis over time again. We would become balanced again. Now, this day and age, we don't need the bear anymore. It's the work deadline. It's this, it's that. And so we're constantly bombarded with stressors that our endocrine system is responding to. But it's like over time, when it spurts out like it's supposed to, right? That threshold starts to elevate even more. So then we need more. It's like a sugar addiction. Then you need more sugar to actually meet the addiction. But ultimately, as those hormones get released more and more, that's what is taxing the whole system. We want to bring our systems back into regulation, back into a state of relaxation as much as we can, so that whole system starts to rebalance again. Otherwise, it just wreaks havoc on our systems. And we, see it in immune system dysfunction, or we see it in insomnia, or we see it in all these other physical symptoms that start to present.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. It's like a high. It's the same kind of thing. That's why people are always chasing. If you're an addict or whatever, it's like the constant chase of that. So if people are in it, like if I'm in it right now and even realizing what's going on, what can I do to start to reverse while I'm just dealing without having to go to a retreat somewhere for 3 months?
That would be ideal if you could.
To dry out from my burnout.
Yeah, so I'm going to start very basic with look at your diet. Like eating a balanced diet is good. Don't be doing a ton of caffeine. That taxes the adrenal system.
Oh, yeah.
Making sure that you're getting your servings of fruits and vegetables every day, not high fat foods, saturated fats, those things. Getting enough rest is important, to making sure that, sleep is so foundational to so much of our health and so much of our life, that getting good quality sleep, if you can, is very important. Letting go of perfectionism.
Yeah.
That's a hard one, particularly for type A's and people pleasers, is like that drive and that need to make sure that we put out the perfect product or heal every person that comes in our door, or is just getting into a mental space, a mindset with yourself that, what you are putting out there is good enough, because that's really driven by a deep subconscious fear of not being good enough, really is where perfectionism and people pleasing comes from. So just reaffirming and reassuring to yourself that, it's okay to not be perfect all the time. People make mistakes. That's part of our life. That's part of our journey. That's part of our teaching. Even for me, I teach mistakes, right? And delegating where you can. That's a big one too. I'm an entrepreneur like you. We are in these positions where we do wear so many hats. So once we get into a position that we're actually able to start delegating, or even if you can barter for some of your services in some way, if you can't afford to necessarily hire somebody, a VA or something like that to do, just figure out where you can get some help along the way and not be the one doing everything.
Yeah.
What else? Obviously, that learning to say no piece is really big.
Yeah.
And I would say meditating. I mean, I know people, particularly type A's, are like, I don't have the time to do it. I can't quiet my mind down enough. I'm not good at it. It's not about, I always tell people, it's not about the duration that you do it initially. Just 5 minutes a day. Just 5 minutes a day. Sit in stillness. Or if stillness doesn't work for you, do a guided meditation or listen to nature sounds. Go for a walk outside if nature is something that speaks to you. Take your dog for a walk. Listen to music if music is what is inspirational for you. Something to just allow the decompression of everything that's going on mentally. And then over time, do those 5 minutes for the first 3 or 4 weeks, and then start to increase it if you can. But don't ever, I really hate to hear people just give up on meditation because they're like, well, I still have thoughts come into my mind. Absolutely. None of us are thoughtless during meditation. Thoughts tend to just be actually stress leaving the mind in meditation. So it's a good sign that thoughts are coming in. Where the practice truly comes is just, can I get into what I call observer mode? Like you're watching a movie before you. Can your thoughts be that movie and you're just the person that's sitting in the theater watching it go by? That's all meditation really is. That's what mindfulness is. It's just allowing it to go before you. It doesn't have to be no thought at all. We're not Buddhist monks here. So
yeah. No, I love that. I think that's fantastic. I mean, you did the same thing for me whenever, we'll start to wrap this up here. She has not mentioned yet, but she is an RT hypnotherapist, and being type A, I'm one that's going, I can't be hypnotized. And you said at one point, you were like, when you go and you drive a car and you go from point A to point B and don't really remember getting there, that's hypnosis. And I was like, okay, so this helps with meditation for sure. I mean, that's one of the things I love, that these kind of tactical things, because I'm a very, again, type A, tactical. I need to be able to do things with this. I can't have this just ideas floating out there. So thank you for that. I so appreciate it. Before we wrap, do you have one piece of advice for people listening on this topic or anything else?
Yeah, I would say, just based on our discussion today, just approach any of it with an open mind, because these things truly are easy to implement in life. And ultimately, just doing one or two of the things that we've discussed today can make such a difference to the trajectory of your health, right? So I always think about it like whenever we shoot off rocket ships, if the launch pad were to change 1 degree where that rocket gets launched, its trajectory over time, if you think about it, is much different than what its original trajectory was. So that 1 degree difference, that 1 or 2 little things that you incorporate maybe in a daily practice now, can really change a lot over a long duration of time. So don't get defeated. Don't be self-defeatist, I guess, is my advice, is just stay open-minded, try a few things, see what works for you. Not everything is going to work for you. Pick the things that do and stick with it.
Fantastic. I love that. Well, thank you so much. Can you let everybody know where they can find you on social, on your website? Where can everybody look you up?
Sure. Yes. Website is www.shinewithshanna.com. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at ShineWShanna now. So I've got content out there about all of this, everything we've discussed. My blog on my website has a lot of this information too that you can pull from if you're interested in doing a deeper dive into it all. And yeah, I'm always open to DMs and questions. Shoot them on over if anybody's got questions. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for doing this for me. This has been,
thank you.
I've already got stuff that I'm writing down that I need to do. Good. So hopefully we can do it again. And I really appreciate it, Shanna. So good to see you.